This is a Film Stories original podcast.
We made this.
Hello again, and welcome back to the X-Cast. As ever, the truth is in here. And, I mean, you all know the score by now. This is our special Fight the Future Minute podcast series, in which we go through the film minute by minute. We're on minute 58 today. I'm your host for this one, Carl Sweeney. And this minute is one that begins at the 57 mark, as we see an extended shot of Mulder and Scully's car, which actually began in the previous minute. And when this one ends at 57:59, they're still in situ, just after Mulder makes a bit of a leap of faith after they come to a crossroads. And to discuss this minute, I'm joined once again by Caredwen Foley. Hey, Caredwen.
Hello, how are you?
I'm reasonably well. How are you?
I'm also reasonably well. We are both recording this in the midst of the coronavirus quarantine period. So hopefully by the time you're hearing this, things are better.
So the 3rd of May 2020, just to put a stamp on it. Yeah, so weird. I mean, listening back to some of the early episodes going out, and from just such a carefree time, you know. It feels like I was a different person back then.
We were fools.
In so many ways.
Happy fools.
So this minute, so they're driving, they've been sent on their way by the kids. They've been pointed in the right direction. They're after this tanker truck. They don't know how far behind it they are. And then they come to a fork in the road. And it's like, should we go left? Should we go right? Eventually, Mulder decides that no, they should plough straight on, you know, where there is no road. No proper road. What struck you most about this minute, Caredwen? What did you most appreciate, I suppose?
Well, I do like that at the end of it we get out of our, long car commercial shot. And get to be actually in the car with our heroes. We've had a lot of opportunities to interact with Mulder and Scully in cars over the years, and
we have.
I think that it's kind of it's a nice little interlude or sort of prelude to the rising action, because so often at the beginnings of episodes we get an extended kind of conversation between Mulder and Scully as they head to whatever town they're going to be investigating to sort of unpack things. And in this one, there's less exposition to happen because we've gotten to see that in the first half of the film. But it's a little bit of it's an interstitial that still feels like kind of a nice, hearkening to that pattern. It's interesting to me too, and we'll get into this, I think, even more in the subsequent minute, but, there's a good sense of tension because we are sort of in this rising action, and because we know that Scully's due back in Washington the next day. There are some external forces here that, in addition to the very clearly malicious ones that they're pursuing, you feel them a little bit boxed in at this point. And so to see them taking off down an open highway with open miles and miles and miles of desert on each side, and then to go off the road altogether, it's kind of exciting and liberating to get out from under these constraints and the sort of darkness and danger that sort of feels like it's closing in.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because on the commentary track, I think it's Frank Spotnitz. He talks about that in kind of similar terms. He talks about how it was kind of nice to get out from those, what he calls lush, moist Vancouver environments, and comparing it to a location like we have here. So yeah, I think that's an interesting thought. I think this kind of discussion they have in the car, it works very well, I think, on a symbolic level, in the sense that it kind of reflects the fact that Mulder and Scully get to the truth by combining their knowledge together, doesn't it? And here it's because they go straight on instead of left or instead of right. perhaps, I don't know, is there an argument that it works a bit less well on a plotting level, on like a literal level? Like it's maybe it's a bit of a leap that he takes there. But like I said, I really like the character, the way it works on the character level.
Yeah, I mean, I don't... The fact that we also... I mean, this gets us into the next minute, but they have to go a pretty long way. They're in the car for a long time, driving in a straight line, and you have to wonder, what were the intervening, like, couple hours, like, that they were there after he made that leap? Like, it's not like it immediately... It takes a while for that to bear fruit, and I have to think that, 50 miles back or so, Scully was like, you couldn't have just turned. Come on. Yes, it's a little hard to, narratively reconcile it, but I agree, it's a nice piece of just, like, metaphor.
I think there are a few things like that in the film. Like, if we think about the bee scene, like, it doesn't really make sense to me how the bee knows to intervene at precisely that moment, but it's kind of satisfying in other ways.
It's very poetic.
Yeah, it's exactly right, yeah. There isn't much. I didn't really pick up much about this one from the Blu-ray, to be honest. Spotnitz says at one point that this scene was an editing puzzle, but I wasn't really sure what he meant, and he didn't elaborate, and I think they got on to talking about something else. So I really have no sense what that might mean. I mean, I didn't really notice anything on the level of editing. I don't know if you did. Or...
No, I didn't either. I mean, I'm kind of surprised to hear that, honestly, because it does seem... Yeah, I'd be very curious to know what he meant by that.
We'll never know. We'll never know. Is there anything else? I mean, that's there's not much else that I picked up, to be brutally honest. I do have some facts about cars, but what did you think, Caredwen?
I'd be happy to hear your facts about cars. I mean, I will say I can remember that it was the Oldsmobile intrigue, if I remember correctly, that was part of the big marketing kind of tie-in with the film. I remember there being some like kind of conjoined advertising, and of course, like this particular minute.
Is that the car they're driving in this sequence?
I believe so.
Okay.
R.I.P. Oldsmobile.
I didn't know. I tried to Google Mulder and Scully's car, Fight the Future, but I didn't really throw up anything. So
I think that's right. If my 2 decades old memory can be trusted. But yeah, what are your car facts?
Okay. I can do a couple. I might save some for future minute, next minute. Let's see. The first one. Okay, so this is from carkeys.co.uk. The guy who invented cruise control was blind. Did you know that?
No, I had no idea.
Okay, let me give you some background then. So, Ralph Teeter, who went blind at the age of 5 due to an accident, found that when he rode a horse alongside a friend of his who was also on a horse, his friend would speed up when listening and slow down when talking. This inconsistency annoyed Teeter so much that he set out on inventing a device that could control speed, but for use in an automobile. In 1945, after 10 years of research and development, Teeter eventually filed a patent for a speed control device, although it wasn't called cruise control at first. Other names included Touch-O-Matic, Control-O-Matic, and Press-O-Matic. Cruise control finally became the common name for it, and it was first commercially used by Chrysler in 1958.
My goodness. It's certainly a much better name than, like, Press-O-Matic, which... That doesn't tell me what it does. That sounds like it's a coffee maker. Yeah.
I'll give you one more car fact, and then I'll save the rest for next minute, I think. This is one, I think this applies to the USA. I also believe it's applicable in the UK. So, in many states in the USA, you can be charged with a DUI even if the car is parked and you're sleeping while drunk. So, I believe it's also even if there's no engine in the car. That's what I've heard.
Is that right? My goodness. That seems like a perverse incentive. Because if you're going to get charged with a DUI, whether you're driving or pulled over, sleeping something off, I mean, I guess the idea is that they're charging you for the driving you did to get your car to a place where you could pull it over. But, like, if there's no practical difference between the penalties for both of those things, then why wouldn't a person just keep going? That's a terrible legal strategy.
I mean, I could also see it being about intent, in that you could get in a car that had somehow had the engine removed with the full intent of driving it whilst drunk. So the fact that you haven't actually been able to because the engine's been taken out. I mean, I'm struggling to think of a scenario when that actually would happen, to be honest, but I could sort of see that.
I mean, as somebody who admittedly, like, takes a little bit of a more kind of consequentialist approach to, you know, my opinions about laws and ethics and things like that, those seem like they would reward bad outcomes.
What does that mean in a nutshell? Consequentialist approach.
That I'm concerned with, you know, the ramifications of it in practical terms, and less like the sort of the more theoretical kind of ethical construction there. That seems like it would contribute to more people just deciding to risk it and drive drunk. That seems like a bad idea.
It does. So, I mean, it's only many states in the USA. It's not all. So, that's something to be thankful for, I suppose. Did you Google the Oldsmobile? Did you find anything?
I just checked it out. It was indeed the Oldsmobile intrigue. It says that the model's launch coincided with the release of the film, and its producers and the film's producers and GM's executives at the time felt the car's name and appearance fit with the aesthetic of the X-Files franchise. So the aesthetic is the car's appearance fitting with the aesthetic is like, yeah, this is a pretty bog standard sedan.
Yeah. That
you might see a couple of feds rent, but the name Oldsmobile Intrigue certainly is a very, you know, X-Files-y name.
It is. I mean, there are some, I believe David Duchovny did some car commercials. I remember seeing them back in the day. I can't remember what car they were for, but the ads were very much tapping into like an X-File-y type mood. I'll tell you what, listeners, I'll have a look for those ads and I'll post, and I'm sure they're on YouTube these days. But yeah, I guess we're about done here for minute 58. Caredwen, where can people find you online? We haven't done a social media link for a while. If they would like to find you.
I can be found in the XCast Basement Facebook group. I'm also on Twitter at Caredwen, Caredwen.
Perfect. And you can find the XCast, of course, on Twitter at the X_cast. You can come and join our basement group, which is really fun. I'm on Twitter at CKJ Sweeney. And Caredwen, you'll be back with me, of course, for minute 59 as this scene continues. So I'm looking forward to that. Tune in again, listeners. Until our next minute, remember, as always, trust no one.
Previously on the We Made This Network. By Projection Light.
Dickinson also brings the audience's attention to a then unknown Audrey, who shines like a bright, pure beacon the whole film. It's quite amazing to think that only a year after this film, she would be cast in the film that would catapult her to superstardom and garner her an Oscar win. But it's also not difficult to believe. Her performance is so unaffected, as if she's living the part of Nora, which, as I've said, she almost had already. And it's also wonderful to see her dance, particularly during the audition scene towards the start of the film, where she flits and spins like an angel. It made me think of how she had danced during the war for audiences who were not allowed to clap due to the prohibition of public gatherings, but how she brought joy to those people as she brings joy to everyone who's watching this film every time she dances.
Don't say the C word.
Sex, drugs and rock and roll isn't a cliche. I've seen it all. There's a unique group of groupies that feel the need to collect, if that's the right term to use, like all of the band members, as in to sleep with all the band members and all of the crew.
Oh, wow. So they kind of, do they work their way from the top down, or do they work their way from the bottom up?
Yeah, get to whoever they can first. And it would always be me and one of the band members that they'd never get. And I was quite proud of that. I was like, yeah, I'm the one that you don't know about. So like, you can never brag. I'm not a bragging right.
That's pretty admirable. And is there a particular reason why you're not going to shag the groupies?
At the time, I was a virgin and I didn't want my first time to be with just some random lady on the road.
Bloody hell, that really is admirable. I think I'd have thrown my virginity at anybody, to be honest with you.
It got to the point a few years on, like, I was like, I'm thinking about it now. But no.
The time is now, a Millennium podcast.
The way that he's offered that job, I think he's done that before. It's not out of character for him to go into a situation like that. I know it's done with a bit more levity earlier on the season in Goodbye Charlie, where he goes to speak to the the social worker, and he lays off all of his problems, which is a great scene in that episode.
Yeah, it's very hard to have that sort of levity when you're dealing with literal Nazis, to be fair.
Well, yeah, it's a slightly different take on the same kind of.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether the Mel Brooks sequence of that would probably be something to behold.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.